Hey, we are going to talk about something called relations. But before I start giving you any vocabulary, we're going to take a look at something you've probably seen before, a menu. Okay, if you've read a menu, you have experienced working with ordered pairs. As we get through the vocab, you'll also realize you have experienced relations. Okay, you may not realize it, but you'll see in a second. So with this menu that I have listed here, the food items are on the left and the prices are on the right. It's very easy to tell that the price of pizza is $2. There are no questions about how much what costs. Now, this is typically how menus are listed, but what if the menu was listed like you see here, in a list with commas separating everything? You could look and assume that a hamburger is $3.50. But if you weren't paying full attention or something was in the way, you could mistake the price of pizza for $3.50 because all that's separating everything is a comma. So you usually don't see menus listed like this because there could be some confusion about pizza. Is it $3.50? Is it $2? A sandwich, is it $2? Is it $4? It could get confusing if you're not following from beginning to end. So you really don't see menus written like this. But if for some reason the restaurant owner wanted to make a list, what could they do that would show exactly how much each item cost? So if they wanted a list, the restaurant owner, think about what could they add that would separate each item and price so it was a lot easier to see. They could use parentheses. Okay, that's one type of notation that you could see, that you could use. So if I put parentheses around my item and price, item and price, item and price. So I still have a list. It's just that I added some parentheses so that I could group together the items that belong together. And if you look at these for a second, looks like ordered pairs, doesn't it? My X value is the food, Y value is the price. X value is the food, Y value is the price. X value is the food, Y is the price. They're ordered pairs. So again, if you've ever read a menu, you've actually experienced ordered pairs before. You just probably didn't even realize it. You've also experienced a relation if you've looked at a menu. Okay, because a relation is any set of ordered pairs. It's a set because they go together. Okay, so when we say a set of ordered pairs, it's just an ordered pairs that belong together. Doesn't mean they're connected or that they represent something specific. It's just a grouping of ordered pairs together. In this case, we had menu items. Okay, usually there's some sort of relationship. It's where the word relation comes from. But you definitely need to know a relation is any set of ordered pairs. Now, we've already talked about the ordered pairs being an X value and a Y value, or X coordinate and Y coordinate. But there are also some other words that you could say instead of X coordinate and Y coordinate, and those are going to be important for you to know. Okay, so two words that are going to be very important for you to know are domain and range. Let's look at domain first. The domain is the set of all first members of the ordered pairs. So the first member of the ordered pair. So if you have an ordered pair, the first value is always what? The x coordinate. The second value is always the y. So the domain is the same thing as the x coordinate. Another word that you may hear the domain called is the input. They're all the same, talking about the same thing. Domain, x coordinate, input. They're all talking about the first part of the ordered pair. The first member. Now the range is the set of all second members of the ordered pairs. So for the range, we're actually looking at the second number, so that would be the y coordinate. Also could be called the output. These are all words that you may hear that are pretty interchangeable. Different situations, you'll hear in specific situations, they'll use the words domain and range. Other situations, more than likely, you'll see x coordinate, y coordinate. So there are times where one word fits better, but domain, x coordinate, input, they're all talking about the same thing, the first number in the ordered pair. Now, a way that you can try to remember these, the way I always remembered, was with domain and range. Domain comes before range in the alphabet. D comes before R. X comes before Y. So that's how I always associated domain with the X and range with the Y, because D and X come before in the alphabet if you compare them to R and Y. Okay, so since domain came before range in the alphabet, I knew domain was the X because X comes before Y. Same thing with input and output. I comes before O, so the input is the X value, the output is the Y value. So all of the letters D, X, and I come before their matching word in the alphabet. D comes before R, X comes before Y, I comes before O. That's how I always remembered it. It's up to you how you do that, though. So let's do a little practice. Identify the domain and the range. So what you're given here is you're given a list of ordered pairs. Okay, this is your relation. You'll see the relation is listed with these little brackets. The bracket holds the set of ordered pairs. So these ordered pairs have some sort of relationship. We may not ever have to figure that part out. Just know that when you see this little bracket, that means these ordered pairs are grouped together. They're a relation. Now, when you're asked to identify the domain and the range, that means we want you to list out the numbers that are the domain numbers and list out the range numbers. So you're going to write a list. You'll write a list for the domain, and you'll write a list for the range. Okay, so the domain numbers are the x values. So I'm going to make a list of the x values. The only thing is, if you remember me saying sometimes certain situations, domain and range would be things you want to use. Other situations, input and output is a better word to use. Showing domain and range is a little different. So even though they all represent X coordinate or Y coordinate, there are some things that you have to follow formatting wise and things like that. For domain and range, you want to write the list using the little bracket or brace symbol. Do your best. If you have to draw a squiggly line, draw a squiggly line. But what you'll do is you'll go through and you look at all of the first numbers. I have a 0, a 2, a 3, and 5. And I'm just going to list the numbers. You want to list them in numerical order. Okay, so definitely make your list in numerical order. And you don't repeat numbers. Okay, so when you're listing your domain and your range, you need to go in numerical order, smallest to largest. And if you have any numbers repeating, you just don't have to include them. Here's what I mean. If you look at the range are the Y values. I have 1, 4, 7, 4. See how I have a repeated 4? I only have to list it once. Basically, what we're doing with this list is I'm asking you to tell me how are the X values? What's the smallest X value? What's the biggest X value? What kind of X values are in between? For the range, what's the smallest Y value? What's the biggest Y value? What kind of Y's are in between? The domain and range will not always tell you how many ordered pairs. It won't tell you what matches with what. I can't look at my list and say, oh, okay, well, 0, 1, 2, 4, 3, 7. Okay, that seems great so far. But then I have a 5 here and nothing to match. So don't always count on those numbers matching up like that. Okay, domain and range really aren't, it isn't something you'll be asked to find so that you can figure out what the ordered pairs are. It doesn't really work that way. So don't get hung up on trying to match things. All you need to remember is they're in numerical order and you don't have to repeat the numbers. Okay. Just within the domain and the range. Okay, so you look at your domain numbers, list them out. You don't need to repeat any domain numbers. Then look at your ranges, same type of thing. So let's look at another one. Identify the domain and the range. If you want to try on your own, hit pause and try to list the domain numbers and then come check in and see how you did. So you should have -1, -3, 6. If I focus in on my X coordinates, remember we want them in numerical order, so negative, actually, let me fix that. Should be -3, -1, 6. I don't repeat my -1s, not necessary. So take a look at the range. So for the range, you want to focus in on the Y coordinates. If you want to hit pause, try this on your own, see how you do, and then check back in. So -1 is my smallest, 0, 2, 4. Again, I'm not worried about matching domains and ranges up. I'm not worried about having the same amount of numbers. I want numerical order and no repeats. It's not necessary to write the numbers repeating. All right. On a side note, this isn't something you have to write. Um, when you see a relation, okay, so far the only way you've seen a relation is a list of ordered pairs. That's what we've just been working with. So we can represent as a list of points. That's what we've just seen. You can also represent a relation using a table. You can use a map, or you can graph. And we're going to take a look at each of these representations. You've seen a list of points. We actually just got done working with some lists of points. So these would be ordered pairs that are a complete set. Okay, so these are sets of ordered pairs. Pretty straightforward, nothing really to add to this. You can also represent a relation as a table. Input or X values, output Y values. So if you remember when I talked about domain and range, I said that sometimes certain words fit better with different situations. When you're given a table of values, input and output tends to be the vocabulary that will get used when you have a table. Because with tables, there's usually some sort of equation. You put whatever this first number is the input, you put it in the equation and you get the next number. Usually when you'll see input output. But again, our X's and our Y's. So what you could actually do is you could take the table and create ordered pairs. So I don't know how much room you have. You may have to kind of shuffle the order here. But take a second and look at this table and see how I can make the input and the output, or the X and the Y, into an ordered pair. Because remember, a relation is a set of ordered pairs. So any representation that you have, you should be able to create ordered pairs from. And I only did opposite sides here just for, I didn't have a lot of room. But take a second on the table and show the ordered pairs that the table represents. Graphing points is another way to show a relation. Now, these are all the same ordered pairs. The list of points, if you notice, matches the table. The table is going to match these ordered pairs. So I have my ordered pair -1. 1 is right here. My next ordered pair, and I'm just working left to right, is 2, 0. My next ordered pair is 3, 1. Then I have 3, 2. Oh, and something happened on this one. Let me fix that. Should be 4, 5. There we go. Okay. So again, X and Y values. Usually you'll hear X coordinate, Y coordinate when we're talking about points that are graphed. So again, with tables, usually you'll hear it referred to as input output. On a graph, you'll usually hear it report as X coordinate, Y coordinate. The last representation I want you to see is a mapping diagram. This may be something you haven't seen before, but basically it's a diagram showing the domain and the range. So the domains are on the left, the ranges are on the right. Again, things go in order. X comes before Y, so you can assume that your X values are the first set and your Y values are the second set. Now, when I talked about listing the domain and the range, I said, don't always assume everything matches perfectly. Some sides will have more numbers than others, that type of thing. And this is where you could figure out ordered pairs if you had a mapping diagram. Okay, so from the domain and range lists that we did before in the practice, you may not be able to backtrack and find the ordered pairs, but with a map, you actually can. So if we take a look at what's happening here, this first value here is my first X value. If I follow the arrow, I'll find out my Y value. So -1 matches up with +1. Now let's take a look at my next number, 2. So the X coordinate is 2. The matching Y, or range, is 0. Next up is my 3. Now you'll notice I have 2 arrows. That means I'm going to have 2 X coordinates. So one at a time. 3 is my domain, or my X coordinate. 1 is my Y coordinate. 3 is my X coordinate. 2 is my Y coordinate. So because I have 2 arrows coming off of the 3, that means I have 2 ordered pairs that begin with 3. And finally, 4 maps to 5. So this is more of a visual, like pairing things up. We have our domains on one side, our ranges on the other, and then some arrows telling us what matches with what. Let's do some practice. Here we have some ordered pairs. So we're going to represent this relation. We're already given a list. It's crazy to rewrite a list. So we're going to start at the table. You can make your table vertical or horizontal, doesn't make a difference. But with our table, we have an input value and an output value. The input is our X, the output is our Y. So I'm just going to start with my first ordered pair. My X is 1, my Y is 2. My X is 1, my Y is 5. When my X is 2, my Y is 4. 3, 3, and 4, 1. That's it. You're literally copying the ordered pairs down in just a different way. Let's look at it as a graph. You're just going to go through each ordered pair and plot the points. You can pause and try on your own. While you're back, you're either checking yourself or you're plotting these with me. 2, 4. 3, 3. And 4, 1. Definitely double check that you have the same amount of points as you have ordered pairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Finally, a mapping diagram. This one is a little trickier. It's not hard. But remember, with the mapping diagram, the first values will be the domain. And remember, with the domain, we go in numerical order and we do not repeat. So I have a 1 and another 1. I'm only going to write it down once. 2, 3, 4. And then put some sort of little circle type thing around. Then we have our range, which are my y coordinates. Remember, we want these in numerical order, no numbers repeating. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then now we map them to each other. So if I look at my first ordered pair, 1 matches with 2. So where my domain is 1 matches the range of 2. Then I have 1, 5. So 1 is also going to arrow down to 5. Then I have 2, 4. It's kind of like a matching activity. 3, 3. And 4, 1. Now, one thing to be careful of, if you have any numbers that have been completely left out of either side, like pretend I had a 5 over here and there's no arrow going from the 5, that means that shouldn't be there. Or if I had like 6 here and I have no arrows coming to the 6, I made some sort of error. So every number should have an arrow coming to it or going from it. Some even have doubles. And that's okay. And that's it.